So, here you are, excited to get into your first Monster Hunter experience. Playing through the story, slaying some monsters, crafting some gear, and then suddenly the game turns from a fun RPG to Griffith's idea of a party where you're struggling to keep up with some of the more intense hunts or feeling lost. Hunts could be taking too long, maybe you're carding often, or just feeling lost in how to progress. Well, don't worry my fledgling hunter, you might feel like a baby secret compared to some other people, but with some pointers we can turn you into a mean, lean, green hunting machine. Hi, I'm Acolyte, and I'm just a fan of Monster Hunter that went through many of the struggles some new players did, where veterans might have told me the game was easy, or certain hunts that were kicking my butt were a joke, and had me rolling my eyes over how somebody else can feel that way. Everybody's different though, and so are our journeys through the Forbidden Lands, but that doesn't mean I can't share some general purpose and more specific tips to Monster Hunter Wilds that'll set you up for success. Before we begin, I'd just like to say, if this is your first time playing through the game and are going through the low rank story or early high rank, then don't worry about what the quote-unquote optimal thing to do is. You should just focus on enjoying yourself over everything else, and you can click off the video here. This video serves as a way for you to save some time through some of the growing pains of Monster Hunter, but I do also think a lot of these growing pains can be memorable experiences, so don't worry about missing something huge or feeling like you have to do certain things. It's a game, you should enjoy it and have fun. This video will probably cover a lot of knowledge that veterans already know, so aside from some farming tips for wilds, you might feel like you know everything said here already. There will be timestamps below for all the relevant sections, so feel free to watch what you're interested in. If you enjoyed the video, subscribing would go a long way to help me out, but regardless, I hope you enjoy and learn something. With that said, here are some of my best tips for beginners to Monster Hunter. My first big tip for newcomers is to make some loadouts. This sounds like a small thing, but for the longest time, I just kept taking what I needed manually, and over time this can be tedious when you need to keep sifting through tabs to prepare for certain monsters. Many hunts require different tools for you to excel. For example, fighting a monster like Guardian Odageron that causes bleeding can be stopped just by crouching in place for a bit, but you could also use sushi fish scales or wild jerky, cure the bleeding and heal yourself in one go. Or having a separate loadout for flying monsters that includes flash pods so you can knock them out of the air every time they want to just hover around and waste your time. In most Monster Hunter titles, I usually have 3 default loadouts to sift between. One for general purpose if I don't know what I'm hunting yet. This will have your standard potions, mega potions, rations in case my stamina drops, antidotes in case there's poison in the area or the monster can poison me, and life powder as a panic option for quick heals. If you have ancient potions or max potions, there's no harm in slotting these in either. I'll touch up on these 2 more in another section. My last loadout is for captures. Now, admittedly, capturing no longer offers different rewards compared to previous Monster Hunter titles. So you can make the argument that this doesn't matter, but if you want to end a hunt earlier since a monster is giving you trouble, or just don't mind either killing or capturing, then it's a good idea to make one of these with a pitfall and shock trap accessible, along with trank bombs. Those are always my standard go-tos, and if there's a monster that comes along in title updates that needs other tools, I'd either add it to the standard loadout, or just make a separate one for specific monsters. Ultimately, this is up to you, but I do think going into camp for 1 second to refill your items on a loadout, or swap it entirely is really nice compared to doing it manually anytime you're missing something. Tip number 2 is use traps and anything else to your advantage. If you're coming from Souls games or maybe some other RPG where some form of cheese is available, you may look at traps or environmental hazards as some form of cheating or easy mode, and yeah, they do definitely help, but the name of the game is Monster Hunter. Not Monster Hunter, no items, no weapons, no armor skills, final destination, tidy whitey's only run. Using traps is a great way to slow down hunts or give yourself some breathing room from an oppressive monster to heal, sharpen your weapon, or even just get some more hits in when you're having a tough time. It's there for you to use, and honestly, it can be fun to just bully a monster by throwing it into stunlock loops. I don't use them all the time, but it's something I use often as I find them a major help and just a nice way to take some pressure off me when playing weapons I'm not great at, or trying a new build style. This also extends to the environment. In each area, familiarizing yourself where you are is a great way to keep your hunts in your favor and give yourself more openings to cash out on big damage. Some areas will be home to falling boulders you can use to knock monsters over and do some damage to them, vine traps that can entangle a monster in place for a bit, and there's also the toads. Each toad serves a different purpose and they're around more often than maybe you think. Just look around and see if there's something nearby to assist you in your hunt. There are 4 toads and 2 other forms of endemic life that can assist you on your hunts. We have the Paratoad that can paralyze monsters nearby when hit by your weapon or interacted with. The Sleep Toad will give monsters some much needed rest and you time for some barrel bombings. Nitro Toads are like little bombs. When you set them off, they'll light fire to the surrounding area and damage monsters. Great Thunderbugs can also stun monsters like Paratoads, but with the caveat that these won't hurt you, so you can feel free to stand around these. By the way, did I mention that the Toads can affect you too? Because... Lastly are the flash flies. If you have no flash bugs or pods and are fighting a monster nearby one of these, you can hit them with your weapon or interact with the flash flies to flashbang a monster, interrupting roars or moves and sending flyers tumbling down from the sky and giving them a boo-boo. Traps and environmental hazards are your friends, so don't be ashamed or feel weird about using them. I've seen some weird stigmas before, but these aren't something to not rely on as they're readily available, and even when they're not in future quests or arenas, you can just craft versions of these to bring with you and use on monsters anyway. There are paralysis and sleep weapons for a reason, so a trap isn't any different. Do you ever feel like you're fighting for your life, and this little guy is just dancing around, wondering what's for dinner, while you're getting your sideburns singed by a Rathalos? Well, that's where your status weapons come into play. You can equip one on your hunter, but did you know your Palico also has access to these? When I was a newcomer, I didn't really bother upgrading my Palico's gear outside of what I thought looked cool and felt as if their damage or contribution outside of heals was whatever. But if you invest into your partner, they'll have your back like nobody else. Typically, I like to give my Palico a weapon that does the opposite of what I do. So for example, if I'm playing a severing weapon like the Greatsword or Switch Axe, then I'll give this dummy a blunt weapon to inflict KO damage on the monster and get us some knockdowns. Or if I'm playing the stun weapons, then I'll give them a severing blade to cut off tails or other parts that I might not want to hit. You can double up and both go stun or severing too, there's nothing wrong with that, but I like the idea of covering my bases, so try both and see what feels right to you. I also recommend specifically giving them weapons that have status buildup. Whether this is blast, paralysis, sleep, or poison, I think it's a great way for them to have an impact and assist you when they're not dropping traps, healing, or distracting the monster. Palicos are insanely useful, so don't sleep on their equipment as it can be a great help. Likewise, if you want an extra way to deal with a monster, status weapons are your best friend. A Sleep Greatsword for getting a big wake-up hit on a monster, or Paralysis to lock them in place for a bit while you're off getting your longer combos. There are many ways to play, and these are game changers. In Monster Hunter World, they introduced a returning monster that needed specific elements to be able to defeat it over status weapons. So if we ever get something like that here, it's good to have multiple options, but for most of your hunts, some form of status on your Palico goes a long way. All this stuff to craft, slot into your build, or hunt for monsters. How am I supposed to keep up with all this, man? Don't worry, Wilds has you covered there too. As you get further into the game, passing the low rank story and getting into high rank, this is signified by the credits rolling in case you're not sure, you'll get access to trading resources, gathering, and the supply ship. These will refresh as you play, so make sure to check the menus every other hunt just to not miss out on some free materials. Trading will be unlocked as you progress the story and do side quests or missions for the people of the 4 regions. This is a way for you to exchange stuff you can gather around the map for either an item you're in short supply of, or even exclusive rewards such as golden melding tickets for farming decos, or the sinister cloth to make the elusive Death Stench armor. Trading is a great way to get access to some rare monster parts, ancient wyvern coins, and exclusive materials like the 2 I spoke about before. The trade shops rotate every in-game day, I believe, so you can rest at a camp until the next afternoon and check to see if the shops have been shuffled. The resource gathering or farm of this game will unlock after you complete the Lurking Shadows story quest, which will see you hunting a frenzied Nursilla. Once this is done, a side quest in the Windward Plains will open up called Beware the Gypseros. This will be available from Zato of Kunafa Village. After completing this mission, you'll get access to the farm of this game, an automated system that allows you to pick materials you need gathered for supplies. These can range from honeys and herbs for potions, mandragoras for max potions, to mite seeds for the drug addicts. Whatever you need, most of it can be gathered here while you're off hunting and doing other stuff passively. So if you don't like manual gathering, this lessens the times you need to do it. Certain items have an easier time to be harvested during different seasons, so if you're looking for something in particular, it can be a good idea to change the weather first before requesting said item. My personal recommendations would be mandragoras, honey, or nullberries. I don't recommend herbs because you can get a lot of those, but also buy potions directly from Jack or the other supply traders and just turn them into mega potions yourself. I'm not going to go through every single change here, but for those of you that want the information of each item and when the best time to gather it is, I'll leave a link below that can take you to the appropriate site for this information. Aside from this, we also have the supply ship. If you go to the Windward Plains base camp, you'll come across this good looking fella, Santiago, in a jacket that I desperately need them to add to our armor selection. Please Capcom, help me out. Santiago is a merchant that will bring unique items or a giant supply of things you may need in bulk. You won't be able to narrow down his selection to specific items like the material gathering, but he does bring more, and you can specify a category you'd like, such as more medicinal items, equipment materials, or miscellaneous items. Each category's name says it all, but just to make sure you're covered, medicinal will be a supply of healing items such as potions, antidotes, herbal powder. Most of these are pretty simple to craft, but if you don't want to, then this is a decent thing to request, and you can never go wrong having a surplus of healing items stocked up. Equipment materials does what it says. You'll get a random assortment of monster parts to pick up. Sometimes you can get rare materials like a monster plate, but more often than not, it'll be random items. Not bad at all, but you definitely streamline what you need by just hunting the specific monster for their parts instead. Whatever you don't need can be sold for cash or scrapped for armor spheres in the zoos though, so that's something to keep in mind. Miscellaneous items will give you an assortment of weapons, traps, or other random goods for your hunting needs. If you're a hoarder, this will be your favorite category of stuff you'll never use. I do pick up most things that show up if I don't have them yet, as eventually I'd like one of each weapon, but I'd say most people don't have a need for this category. Saying that though, if you do pick miscellaneous, you also have a chance at getting trade-in items like the infamous gold and silver eggs. These items can be sold to Jack for Zenny if you're running low. Each weapon you snag takes it out of the rotation, I believe, or at least lessens the chance of it coming back, giving you more opportunities for trade-in items, but regardless, I'd still recommend one of the other categories more. Each shipment can be purchased with your research points, not Zenny, so it's important to have a good amount stocked up when Santiago is back. The ship cycle takes 6 in-game days in total. 3 to search for goods, and 3 staying in the Windward Plains, so if you want something in particular from the shop, then you'll have to rest a total of 6 days each time to look for it.
I do my job.
At number 5, we've got some chores.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Before you roll your eyes and skip ahead, just hear me out first. Now, I know a lot of you probably just want to fight monsters and that's it. You don't want to run around grabbing items, but I promise you gathering is clutch in so many ways. If you want a way to remember my words, just remember that wisdom comes with age. Always gather everything. If you can remember that, you'll save yourself a ton of time down the line by just grabbing things on missions as you go by or specifically enter the locales to harvest materials. First and foremost, this is the most straightforward way to grab what you need. Go to the map that has your required items, go to the point, gather, done. It's as simple as that. And with the Sacred, getting around isn't a hassle anyways. Aside from the obvious benefit of getting the items you need, gathering is a great way to learn the maps and run around them. You can just set a waypoint, hop on your Sacred, and it'll auto path to the item you need, and that's one way to go about it. But even just by setting the marker yourself and running towards it, you'll discover new stuff just like different areas, gathering locations, or maybe environmental hazards to use on monsters. It's also just a nice way to get some downtime between intense hunts if you still want to play, but relax to some music or a YouTuber's videos. I don't know. The third reason is that gathering can be extremely efficient. Not only are there rare materials to get this way, but by crafting one of the very simple starting high rank sets, you'll have access to more harvests per gathering on any item. I always recommend making armor loadouts for different features. I have different battle loadouts depending on how I want to hunt, but I also have one just for gathering, as this is a great way to harvest materials and gain a surplus of them. The only must-have skills I recommend for this are Botanist and Geologist. Botanist will increase how many items you gather from herbs and other natural gathering resources like seed plants, nuts, insects, and at the final level you can get an extra mushroom per gather for all you shroom addict. Geologist does the same thing but for the mineral materials such as bone piles or ores. I recommend just having both maxed out in case down the line you do want to gather some of the rare materials. Entomology is something you can go for if you want to carve bugs for their material specifically and not worry about smashing the bodies into a billion pieces. Marathon Runner is some decent quality of life as it'll reduce your sprinting stamina cost, but since we have a vehicle with the Sacred, this isn't something crazy anymore. Last one that I actually personally enjoy, but maybe you won't want, is Intimidator. This skill makes it so monsters won't be aggressive towards you even if they spot you when maxed out, so it'll make gathering relaxing and not annoying even if things want to fight nearby. Some monsters are unaffected by this, but it's not so often that it's worthless to run. Gathering isn't bad though, definitely recommended for rare materials, such as special ores or bones that you might need from certain maps. In case you don't get what you're looking for, by the way, you can always save and quit to the title screen, boot up a single player session, all the gathering spots will be refreshed, making farming as painless as possible.
You didn't tell him yet, did you?
Stand aside. I'm the guy. Cake.
My sixth piece of advice for newbies is please, please, please slot defensive skills into your gear. Many hunters and builds online will prioritize damage, how fast can you kill a monster, and how strong can you be. While more damage is great, and I definitely slot some into my build, I have always been of the mindset that quality of life or defensive skills are even more important than that. You can have all the damage in the world, but until we're one-shotting monsters or you're doing no-hit and speedruns, you could stand to slot some defense into your build. In Granblue Fantasy Relink, a bit of a similar game, people build for just damage all the time. No defensive stuff in their kits. This sounds fine on paper, just don't get hit. Dodge, block everything. And for some of you, yeah, you might be able to play like this. But if you're not playing like your life depends on it, then please put some defense in there. Please. Be alive, not fancy. Because you can be as fancy as you want, but if you're the guy triple carding, nobody is gonna remember that crazy counter you hit on a monster. They're gonna remember that you failed their quest. Imagine hunting with your friends and you're telling them about your super cool build, and they're like, okay, yeah, sick. You go to hunt the monster they're fighting for their lives, working together, messing up the monster, and you're just wham, one hit on the floor. Wham, one hit on the floor. Wham, failed quest. And everybody just turns to look at you like you said you liked underwater combat. Bring this back, please. To alleviate you of this embarrassment, my friend, I'm going to recommend a few defensive skills that I personally enjoy. First and foremost, we have Divine Blessing. Divine Blessing has a chance to reduce the damage you take in late game hunts. You'll really want something like this so you aren't getting two-shot or worse. The skill at level 1 only reduces damage by 15%, but level 2 ups this to 30%, and level 3 is 50%. There are some decent armor pieces that offer this as a built-in skill, so it shouldn't be too hard to come by, and give yourself some survivability. If you're cool with RNG forms of mitigation, next up is Free Meal. Free Meal gives you a chance to not consume your items or food randomly, ranging from 10% of the time at level 1 to 45% of the time at level 3. It used to be stronger, but it's still really good and nothing to laugh at. Being able to save a max or ancient potion is something you'll appreciate, especially considering the rarity of the ingredients for these consumables. If you're not a fan of RNG, don't worry, we do have some active effects that you can rely on whenever. Speed eating and recovery up are pretty good. Speed eating will reduce the time it takes to drink potions, eat a steak, or other items that heal the hunter mid-combat. This gives you less moments where you're vulnerable or allows you to squeeze in a heal where maybe you wouldn't be able to before. Recovery up will increase the amount you're healed by consumables, so if you just want to use less items, this is another option to go for. For those of you selfless hunters that want to help newbies or those struggling, I recommend Wide Range. This skill allows your consumables to affect other hunters as you're using them, so you can have some supportability for your friend that swears they're great at hitting the greatsword tackle, only to get knocked out of a true charge slash that they want to sneak in instead. It's me. I'm that friend who swears they can hit the tackle. I'm not sorry. Defensive skills check, materials check, general tips check. So aside from that, I have a few things you can do to squeeze out some extra juice from your hunters. Firstly, everybody should do the side quest for Rex and Cobb, two NPCs that will show up in the story after the Frenzied Nursilla quest we spoke about earlier. By completing their side quests, you'll get access to the armor and power charms, two items that will grant you some extra defense and attack just for having them slotted into your loadout. Since it's free, you should add this as there's no reason not to, it's just a little extra boost for you. Eventually, we'll get a title update to upgrade these into the armor and power talons, which are enhanced versions of these items. Then there's crafting. Just make sure to fill out your crafting list and get access to all the recipes. Sure, you might never use some of these twice, but it's nice to have and also a great way to know what you need for some of the best tools in the game, such as max potions that will heal you to full, ancient potions that heal your health and stamina to full, and by full I don't mean as much as the bar is at currently, but rather they'll increase it to the max it can go. So it'll be the same thing as like when you eat a meal or if you pop a well done steak in the middle of a fight. There's also herbal medicine that will heal you and cleanse poison. You could also make traps, barrel bombs, trank bombs, you name it, it's here. In case you're not sure how to craft something, you can check it out in the list, and if you don't have the items needed to craft it, by hovering over them, it'll show you what you need to craft those required mats as well. A good example of this would be the ancient potion and max potions. To make a max potion, you need a mandragora and a catalyst. Mandragoras are just mushrooms you can pick up or request from the item gatherers. See how gathering can come in handy, right? But the catalyst is an item you'll need to make. This item comes from honey and bitterbug broth. You can just find the bugs out in the maps and get it directly from them. After you have the honey and this bitterbug broth, you can craft yourself a catalyst and boom, a max potion after that. It might sound tedious, but honestly, as long as you're gathering as you go around, and request the right stuff from the material gathering, you'll eventually have a surplus of these nice tools. As for the ancient potion, this one has a little more to it. You'll need an immunizer and nourishing extract. Nourishing extract is the easy one to grab. Just fight any guardian of your choice. Immunizers, on the other hand, will ask for Mandragora and that bitterbug broth, which you would have from just attempting to make max potions anyways, so gathering one thing will help you gather them all. Everything you do in Monster Hunter builds upon itself to set a nice foundation for your hunting journey of stuff you can keep pulling back from if you need things later on. So it's good to build these habits now while your account's young. Okay, I've also got one secret tip I'll throw in for gameplay's sake. This one is extremely general, but I do think it's nice for most people to have, and that's designating yourself a rival. Do you have that one monster you keep carding to, it frustrates you to no end, you dread seeing quests with it pop up? Well, you're in luck because you just found yourself a sparring partner. This might sound silly to those that are new, but almost every experienced hunter has one monster they'll test their new builds or weapons on. Something you're so familiar with that you can read all their moves like a book, and this helps you adapt to different playstyles or weapons, making you better at the game. I do have some recommendations, but by all means, if you already have a monster you feel good at reading its moves or tells, then go and practice on that one. For example, I used Chattacabra and Doshaguma primarily to showcase weapons in my overview video. Part of that was to avoid spoilers, but I also think they're great for beginners to practice on. They're extremely telegraphed, not jumping around all over the place tripping you up, and they don't have weird gimmicks like some monsters do. It's a straight up vanilla hunt that anybody can wrap their head around. Are they difficult? Not to me, but even I'll get hit by a move occasionally, or practice a weapon against them to understand its gameplay loop, and you don't get heavily punished for messing up either, so that's nice too. For a true test of your weapon knowledge and build, I'd recommend some of the classics like Rathian or Rathalos. Both are telegraphed, some goofy moves that catch everybody, but the fights are straightforward while doing enough damage to understand what you did wrong. I personally really enjoy hunting Arkveld too, and the tempo of that hunt speaks to me in a way that makes sense, so I also take things there. Even if it results in me carding, it's a valuable lesson for me. I think Guardian Fulgur Anjanath is another good pick, and Ray Dao. A great mix of projectiles to deal with, fast-hitting moves, pace-changing attacks, and good tells for practicing offsets, counters, or perfect guards depending on your weapon. It might start off annoying as a newbie, but once you wrap your head around one monster, you'll Stockholm Syndrome yourself into enjoying the fight. Wait, that's not what I meant. You'll love learning the fights, weapons, and become a hunting pro in no time. That's all I have for you today. To whoever watched this video, I hope you took something away and learned something new. If you didn't, well, please let me know what I could have done better, or give new hunters your own tips down below. If you have a monster you enjoy practicing against, let me know why, because that's something I'm personally curious about. And if you liked the video or found it helpful, it'd mean the world to me if you'd subscribe. With that said, thank you so much for your time, stay safe hunters, and have a great day.